Today, I'm going to ask Awet um, the questions about our 21-point checklist for 21st century companies. Awet's kindly agreed to answer 3 of these points each week over a 7-week series of videos. So what I'd like to do, Awet, is ask you the first question, which
Sure.
is the first point on this 21-point checklist. It states here, an aggressive growth rate in sales stroke earnings for the last 5 years. So how do you do the research for that aspect?
Right. Well, I think when we do a research, I think the past performance is actually an indication for the future price. So when we invest in a company, we look at the future, but the past would give us an indication what would look like the future. So firstly, we look at the past performance, as you said, for sales and earning. And then we discuss about the sufficient potential. If there's sufficient potential to allow an increase in sales for the next 5 years, we just assess the market. If there is sufficient potential, the company can grow in the 5 years. And then we look at the revenue of the company, how the revenue is generated and how is recognized, the company is recognized it. And we look at the revenue is how well is diversified.
Yes.
And I think what we can do as well, in most cases as well, we can see the revenue, how much is growing and compare it to the industry and competitors. And we can compare it to the economy as well. That will give us a good picture to see what is the company at and how the future, we can assess the future growth from here. And I think there's so many ways we can assess the growth as well. We can see if the business product can be diversified, and as the company grows, we can see that as is it possible, and is it possible? Is it the company can be able to do that in the long run? And we look at the company revenue as well, because sometimes there's a good correlation between the company revenue and if it's relying on any particular commodity or any credit of the company. So we have to assess that correctly. And once we assess that, we look into it and we can make a decision to invest in the company.
Okay. So how does that square with the warnings that companies always put in their marketing materials that the past performance is no guide to future performance, and you may not get back the full amount you invested?
Right. Well, because I think when you invest, the future is always unknown. I think that's how we approach it when we invest. We have to make sure we use the past performance to assess the future,
Okay.
but it's always the future remain unknown, and that's why we have to assess it. Assess it accurately to make sure and we investing in the right market, in the right company.
But isn't it true you do take some account of the current year position and future years? Isn't that true in the software you use when you're analysing these companies? It's not just past performance, is it?
Yeah, as I said, we definitely use the feature because, as I say, the past is just a guidance for the future.
Yes.
And we rely mostly on the future, what the company will do in the future,
Yes.
how much will grow in the future and in the long run. As I said as well, we invest in a company for at least 5 years. So because in the short run, it's quite difficult to predict what would happen. But in the long run, I think we can see which sectors are emerging, which markets are growing.
Yes. Awet, so the second point on this 21-point checklist, it states here, appropriate research and development spending,
Right.
and likely to continue. So how do you assess that, and why is it important?
Right, because when a company is investing in research and development, what would happen is because it just shows you the company is researching for this feature, because now, especially with so many companies, and the competition is there, and we always look for a company have an edge in the market, and that has to be with research and development. For example, we look at them if the company has a great connection to research institution, or and in order to be innovative and disruptive in the market, you have to have a good flow of information and to constant change and evolve as a company. And I think very important as well, we look at the management, how much are they allocating capital for research and development, because that will give us that will give us an information how the management are allocating for the future, because it's important to invest for the future. And then, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it's interrupt. And I was going to say, when you do this analysis, is there typically a link or a correlation between the amount of R&D expenditure and the future performance of that company and its share price? Do you find that there's a link, a trend there, where companies do spend more on research and development? Is that what you're finding?
Yeah, definitely. As I said, like in order to stay innovative, you have to research the way to grow the business or the company.
Yeah.
And there's a great correlation between research and development, because if you don't evolve, the company will die. And in order to evolve, you have to have a research and development team that can constantly monitor the growing or any emerging technology. That way they can and accurately measure it, and then they can research on that market and finally implement that into their business.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a recent example, and I know it's only the retail sector, but I recently read about Arcadia that's gone into administration, and this company is a famous. They've got some famous brands like Topshop that go back decades, since when I was a. And I heard that the major reason why that they've failed is because they didn't invest much, if any at all, and not much anyway, in online sales. Because my understanding is in retail, you've got to be very good online as well as on the high street. And wouldn't you say that's an example of not spending money on research and development?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you would notice with Debenhams, as you said, I think is always you need to invest in company or management. They are understanding what's coming, right? Because retail sector is changing, consumer behavior is changing. Most people prefer now to do shopping online than going to and thumb. So if that's behavior, you can see it is coming to the market. You have to make sure you cater for that. Behavior as well, right? So in terms of some companies, like you said, Debenhams, they weren't prepared for that, and that's what I mean. The market is always if you don't prepare to evolve, you will die.
Yes, yeah, very true. The third one in this series today is significant cost declines expected. Well, how do you work that one out? How do you find out? I mean, I can understand the principle of having lower costs because that will lead to higher profits. So how do you know the costs are going to decline? And if they do decline for that one company, won't they decline for all companies in the same sector?
Right. Yeah, that's true. I think what we would look at into, right, for example, if it's a new company, right, and they need a manufacturing and they need to employ more people at the beginning, right? And so that will, because at the beginning, most companies, they have their profitability is very low. So in order for them to grow, they need to employ more people. They need to find a place to produce material. So they have to find people and manufacturing, and that will cost them a lot of money. But as they progress and they become established, right, the cost will decline, especially if they use technology. It will be more efficient and more effective. So that way, the cost will decline in the long run, and when the cost decline, profitability will improve.
Yes.
And that's how we measure them. So in the long run,
I guess it could be things like robotics, couldn't it? Automation. It's all going to reduce a major cost to companies, which is salaries, of course.
Right. For example, I think recently, I think if you look at them to deliver from, like, for example, Amazon, to use human being is quite expensive. Yes. However, if you have to use a drone, it costs like 50p per delivery. Yeah. So that's quite cheap. I think that's what I think when I say cost decline is by employing drones, for example. You don't have to employ more people. You'll be more efficient and more effective in the long run. That will improve the profit.
It's funny you should mention drones because we have a problem. Well, we had a problem pre-pandemic of
Right.
crowded roads, didn't we?
Right.
Traffic jams and M25 lockups and so on.
Right.
And you can't help thinking, with autonomous driving in the future, less people owning cars and more people using driverless vehicles,
Right.
and with the advent of more and more drones, you can't help wondering if in future the traffic jams will be in the skies, not on the roads.
Yeah, I
Is that
definitely.
something you think could happen, Awet?
Yeah, I definitely agree. In the long run, and I think even like most companies are preparing for it. Like, if you look at the sectors that will expect it to grow in the future, is pretty much, I think, it's like using drones to deliver,
Well,
and drone taxis, for example. I think
yeah.
that we will see that kind of trend is
Well,
emerging, and I'm sure I'm very optimistic in the long run.
yeah, that's good.
And yeah,
Interestingly, you're touching on all the themes we're going to talk about in the next few episodes of this series, because we're obviously going to invest in all those exciting growth areas where the world's being transformed. So, thank you for
right.
your time today, Awet. That's a very useful explanation.
Thank you, Tony.
Very much indeed.
Thanks.